Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
When I came here 5 years ago, I told you that if we were a team, we would have a chance to accomplish special things. And I think winning 2 national championships in the last 3 years is pretty damn special.
I do too. Crimson Tide fans, players, coaches, and administrators gathered Saturday afternoon in Bryant-Denny Stadium to celebrate Alabama bringing back to Crystal football the university's 14th national championship. And with that, we say good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV presented by Buffalo Rock. Once again, nice ice-cold Pepsi Cola. That cold enough for you tonight?
It's cold. How about for you?
I put it in the freezer for a little bit. I didn't want to hear you moan. So it's
I didn't moan.
It's ice cold tonight. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. We got the Pepsi. We got the national championship. Heck, man, let's talk about it. We begin tonight with the official celebration of the Tide's title. UA officials estimated 32,000 fans packed the west side stands of Bryant-Denny Stadium for the celebration. Highlights were shown, key players were interviewed, and of course, Coach Nick Saban addressed the crowd about a team that he says is one of his all-time favorites.
You know, I've never coached a team that was more determined, more dedicated to overcome the adversity created by the first loss to LSU than this group of guys. And they were so well prepared, worked so hard, and have never seen a more dominant performance than what they had in the national championship game in beating LSU.
The only thing better than winning the national championship in New Orleans is coming back to Tuscaloosa to celebrate it. And today we honor you, the coaches and players, for exactly that. And no matter where you go when you leave this university, you will always be a champion.
A couple of years ago, when we were celebrating our 13th national championship, Coach Saban said something that I think we'll always remember. This is not the end, this is the beginning.
All right, Gary Harris back with Rodney Orr, and that was stressed again by Dr. Witt, by Coach Saban, that it is just the beginning. Alabama is in the middle of a great run. The last 4 years have been phenomenal on any level. Of course, the last time that Alabama went on a roll like this, Coach Bryant was the coach in the mid to late 1970s. And, you know, I guess the question now, Rodney, is how long before Alabama wins number 50? Put you on the spot, buddy.
I mean, that's difficult to say. I mean, you know, but at the same time, you look at how they've recruited over the last several years, the recruiting class they're bringing in this year. And, you know, 2 years ago on the cover of Sports Illustrated when Alabama beat Texas was the word dynasty.
That's right.
And, you know, you never really want to say that, I guess. But, you know, when you look at what Alabama's in the midst of right now, I've always thought one of the greatest runs in college football history was in the 80s and early 90s with Miami, and how strong they were, how well they recruited. And I think what Nick Saban is putting together is very similar to what Miami had going with Jimmy Johnson had Johnson not left.
Right.
So I think when you look at Alabama long term, certainly they're going to be right there competing for that spot every year.
Something to point out too, Rod, as compared to Coach Bryant's teams in the 70s, Jimmy Johnson's teams with Miami, then Dennis Erickson, Tom Osborne's team in the mid-90s with Nebraska, all dominant football teams. This team faces some longer odds from the simple fact, though, they play 8 conference games and a conference championship game. So it makes it that much more difficult because over the last 4 years, Alabama has been ranked number 1 at some point in time during the season, has been in competition for really 4 straight national championships, got knocked out late last season, got knocked out in the SEC championship game in 2008. It really is remarkable. 48 wins, 2 national championships, and SEC title in the last 4 years. In this era, it's phenomenal to me.
Well, you know, we've talked about it many times. You know, we've seen it discussed on TiderInsider.com. People talking about there'll never be another time frame like there was in the 70s, which was so great for many of us who had the opportunity to experience it. But when you look at it, Gary, I mean, like you said, right now it's very comparable to that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it is incredible given the competition now, the competition in recruiting, the talent.
The scholarship limitations.
The scholarship limitations. And, you know, I mean, it's really hard to say that this is not the greatest run in school history. And with all due respect to the 70s and even the 60s, because let's remember, Alabama was voted the team of the decade in the 60s and the 70s. So you certainly respect that. But right now what you look at is Alabama's on the verge of, you know, that kind of a dominating type of a program.
Yeah, we're not trying to take anything away from those dynasties. They're in the history books. Incredible runs. But in this day and age with the 85-25 rule, 12 teams, soon to be 14 in the conference, a conference championship game, Alabama's doing some great stuff. I think we all agree on that. Well, linebacker Nico Johnson told reporters following the celebration that the Tide is already chasing championship number 15. Meanwhile, offensive tackle and Outland Trophy winner Barrett Jones was more reserved in his comments. Right now, he's still just savoring the moment.
I think we'll start thinking about that in a few days. But right now, we're just kind of enjoying this one and you know, trying to kind of look back on what an awesome year we had.
And Rodney, in the interest of moving on, Saturday's celebration was the first opportunity for the Tide fans to get a look at two new coaches. Doug Nussmeier, the offensive coordinator, and linebackers coach Lance Thompson introduced themselves to the crowd. Thompson said it was happy to be back in Sweet Home Alabama. We know all about Coach Thompson, his third tour of duty in Tuscaloosa. Great recruiter, absolutely knows his stuff on how to get players in. Nussmeier, more of an unknown commodity. Former Idaho Vandals quarterback, played 5 years in the National Football League, then went and played in Canada. Coached at Michigan State with Jim McElwain. They formed a friendship. He followed McElwain as the OC at Fresno State, then moved on to Washington for 3 years under Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator. Was not the play caller, but he did call plays at Fresno. But this is a guy, you know, impressive pedigree as a player, and now as a coach, he's taken a big step up in his career, and he seems like he's ready for it.
Yep. You know, Gary, when you talk to some people about him as a recruiter, as a coach, they talk first about how well he relates to the players, and that's certainly huge. And when you look at his experience, I mean, he's kind of come up a lot like Jim McElwain did with some connections to Pat Hill out at Fresno State. And of course, he replaced, Nussmeier did, McElwain on Hill's staff. And, you know, like we said last week, Pat Hill certainly a good judge of both of those guys, and he said they're very similar.
Yeah, a lot of people, I've had a couple calls, what's his connection with Alabama and the Fresno State guys? Well, Pat Hill and Nate Saban coached together with the Cleveland Browns. So there's a connection there. They know each other well and are friends, and it's kind of helped out Alabama, no doubt about that. Doug Nussmeier looks like he's ready for this move up, and he'll be the play caller next year for the Crimson Tide next season. Well, up next on Titv, we'll hit the hardwood. How does Alabama break out of this losing skid they're currently in? 3 losses in a row. And still to come, signing day is next Wednesday. But the Crimson Tide has 8 players already. They're already enrolled, including T.J. Yeldon, Mr. Football. We'll talk about him and the others coming up next. And later on, we'll take your phone calls and answer your emails. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Call in now or email us, TITV@WVUATV.com. As always, you're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. All right, we're back. Rodney Orr, Gary Harris, and let's talk a little basketball. You know, I'm disappointed. I'm not going to lie to you. 3 losses in a row for this team. I know it was a tough spot in the schedule, but I just didn't envision this team losing 3 in a row in conference. But they lost a heartbreaker at Mississippi State. Then last Thursday night at Vanderbilt, got it handed to them. Came back and played hard Saturday morning on the short turnaround at Kentucky. But 3 losses in a row. In the last 2 games, I talked about it at 6. Tony Mitchell, one of your star players, is 2 for 17 from the field combined shooting. That's not going to get it. They got a road game tomorrow night that they certainly should win at South Carolina. They need to win it. Come back home against Arkansas on Saturday, Rodney. But it's funny in sports. You lose a tough one, and then it's so easy to snowball.
But at the same time, Gary, and I know you know a lot better than I do, Vanderbilt's a good team, obviously. And we don't have to talk about Kentucky. We know how good they are. So, again, you know.
Yeah, they lost to good teams. All 3 of those teams are good. But at home, Alabama, the way they've protected their home court the last couple of years, they need to beat Vanderbilt. I mean, that's a game they need to win because you know at Kentucky it's an uphill battle. They did play well. They took them down to the wire before losing by 6. But tomorrow night's game at South Carolina is crucial. It's a road game, but South Carolina's not very good. You win that one, you get a little more momentum. You come back home and can beat a pretty good Arkansas team on Saturday afternoon. Then you're back on a roll. That's what they need to do. You need to start winning because I've said all along this should be an NCAA tournament team, but a few more losses and they're going to be in trouble. Well, still to come, Mr. Football comes to the capstone. We'll talk about T.J. Yeldon as well as all of the Tide's early enrollees. Rodney will break them down. He knows them all very, very well. Also, we'll take your phone calls and answer your emails. Again, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. All right, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody. The University of Alabama announced last week the signings of 8 football players, all of whom are currently enrolled in school. And on that list is Daphne's T.J. Yeldon. Let's talk about him, Rodney. The running back sensation was named the state's Mr. Football last Wednesday. Many recruiting services list him as one of the top running backs in the country for 2012. He flipped from Auburn to Alabama. He told us he hopes to make an immediate impact for the Tide.
I think I'll be primary running back, but I haven't really talked to we haven't got an OC. Well, we just got an OC, so I haven't really talked to him. I've been working out a little bit and going to class, so I'm gonna try my best to get in a rotation for the season.
All right, Rod, Bama was behind on him. Auburn did a good job. They got on him early. They got a commitment, but the Tide was able to flip him. And I'm going to tell you, for my money, watching tape on these guys, I think he's the best recruiter in the state of Alabama, and I think he'll have a chance to make a quick impact.
Did you just see that run?
Yeah.
Reminded me of Bobby Humphrey there. I mean, what a talent. You remember how Bobby Humphrey could catch the ball out of the backfield? T.J. Yeldon's very good at that. Maybe even more elusive than Bobby. Of course, Bobby was extremely strong, too, for his size. And but T.J. Yeldon, no doubt, one of the top. Look at that cut right there. I mean, 2 or 3 cuts.
You don't coach that now.
No, that's incredible ability.
Vision,
his feet.
His ability to have that little stutter on the move without having to. He's got a lot of ability. He reminds me a lot of Ingram and Richardson from the standpoint of being a big-time runner, but he's different. I mean, this guy's close to 6'2".
Harvey Williams-looking guy with that, the longer neck, but he's certainly a talented kid.
Going to be fun. Let's run down the other early signees. Rodney, his teammate, a guy that you've liked for a long time, Ryan Anderson. His stock just soared as the season went on. Alabama got on him early. He stuck with the Tide, and, man, this guy could be another Courtney Upshaw.
Well, you just said it. Mike Vickery told me a year ago to watch out for Ryan Anderson, that Alabama loved him. He had been a down lineman, but they were going to stand him up last spring, give the scouts an opportunity to come in and see him in that Courtney Upshaw, Jack linebacker-type role. Alabama offered him very early. Gary, there's a lot of people that think he might be the best player in the state.
Another guy I'm really excited about, former Florida State commitment, Alphonse Taylor out of Davidson High School in Mobile. Hey, he could play nose tackle for you. He could possibly even play in. He could possibly play offensive line. I mean, he's a versatile guy that's big and athletic. Probably
be a nose guard for Alabama. I know that there's been some talk about he really didn't move well, but, again, when you're a space eater like that, maybe and I'm not saying he's Terrence Cody, but that type of player that plugs the middle, how fast do you have to run? But you remember that fumble recovery we saw him, man. He moved pretty well.
Rodney, Alabama's going to need some immediate help at corner because of losses. Deion Belue and Travell Dixon, a couple of junior college guys, can give it to him.
Well, you talk to a lot of people, Gary, and I talked to a lot of people in the junior college ranks as well. They think Deion Belue is an NFL talent. He committed to Alabama, signed with Alabama 2 years ago out of Tuscumbia Deschler, went to the junior college. Great kick returner as well. Don't be surprised to see him figure some way in the kick return game next year.
And the same thing in terms of coverage skills, Travell Dixon could possibly start.
Well, he was the #1 junior college corner in the country, first-team All-American JUCO. Deion Belue was a second-team All-American. Travell Dixon had close to 50 offers, and Alabama got a gem there. The good thing is, as we've talked about, both those guys here now have an opportunity to go through spring practice because it's a position of need for Alabama.
Hey, another guy from high school, Georgia linebacker Dylan Lee. Some people compared him to Brian Urlacher. Big, strong, physical, can run.
Can get bigger, very athletic. Gary's had some shoulder issues. I think he might have had shoulder surgery recently, and I don't know how that might impact him in terms of going through spring practice, but he's already here, and he is definitely a very, very talented kid. His brother plays for Georgia, by the way.
The last 2 early enrollees, a couple of highly rated receivers from the state of Florida, Chris Black and Amari Cooper.
Chris Black was a guy, Gary, last year this time a lot of people thought was the #1 wide receiver in the state of Florida. He's a smaller guy, kind of reminds you of a little bit of some of the guys that Urban Meyer used to recruit at Florida. Speed sweeps, throwing the short passes, the ability to make things happen after the catch, and he is a very, very electric player.
Cooper a little bit longer and certainly a vertical threat.
Well, if you watched, the Under Armour game, I mean, he was phenomenal. He had, a 75-yard touchdown reception, 93-yard kickoff return. I mean, he lit it up. Now, he wasn't a big name last year this time. He came to the Alabama camp. His stock really started to soar after that. There's a lot of people, and I've said this before, that compare him to Nick Brazel at Ole Miss. You know how good he was this past season in terms of his ability and his athleticism.
All right, once again this year, Rodney, Tider Insider is proud to present our Signing Day special from 3:30 to 4:30 on Signing Day afternoon. That's next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday, February 1st, live from Bryant-Denny Stadium. That'll include Nick Saban's Signing Day press conference live during the program. So join Rodney and I for that. It's a lot of fun, and we will recap all of the signees for you. It's going to be another exciting signing day for Alabama football, possibly the #1 rated class in the country again. All right, let's get to some phone calls. Harold has been holding from over there in Anniston. Harold, welcome into the program.
Hey, how y'all doing today, guys? Want to say roll tide.
I hear you, Harold.
My question is, guys, with Nussmeier coming in this year, do you think Coach Saban is liable to get more involved with the offense, the play calling?
No, probably not. You know, I think Coach Saban's involved with every aspect of the game as far as what he wants done. But as far as calling the plays are concerned, I think Nussmeier is going to be the play caller right now.
That's what he came here to do. And again, as you mentioned, Gary, certainly Nick Saban has his print on everything. This will be his system that Doug Nussmeier will work within. And again, that familiarity he has from the past, Gary, with Jim McElwain, I think certainly helps in terms of just blending in.
All right, let's stay over in Northeast Alabama and talk with our buddy LD. They're in center. LD, what's going on?
Not much. I was wondering how deep we were at wide receiver, and if some of the new guys might come in and make a impact.
Right on both counts. They're looking to get deeper. Rodney, we just talked about a couple of the guys going to help them get that way. Also, Carter, Deron Carter should be ready to play. So there's going to be some guys that need to step in and play, but there's a lot of young talent at that position.
You lose Mays, you lose Hanks, certainly guys that have been key contributors the last 3 or 4 years. But again, you mentioned Deron Carter. How about Kevin Norwood?
Yeah.
We've been talking about him for 3 years now. Look, he came up huge in the game against LSU. He showed off that athletic ability. Hopefully, that's a springboard for Kevin Norwood.
Kenny Bell.
Future. Kenny Bell's a guy that certainly started to contribute some this year. And there's other guys, you know, guys that were redshirted. Marvin Shin, Danny Woodson Jr., you know, they'll certainly get an opportunity in the spring. Then we talked about Amari Cooper, Chris Black, and don't forget Eddie Williams.
Yeah.
You know, first guy that committed to Alabama in the 2012 class.
So some unproven guys, but it might wind up being a very deep position before all is said and done. All right, let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with Joseph. Joseph, what's going on?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, what's up? What's up, everybody?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, but let me ask you this. Now, after the 2012 season ends, is there a chance that we might see Adrian McCarron enter the NFL draft?
You know, there's a chance, Joseph. I mean, that's so far away right now. I mean, even AJ would probably tell you his focus is on 2012. I'm sure a lot of it will depend on what kind of season he has.
Yeah, again, I really don't know how to comment on that other than to say we'll just kind of have to see how he develops right now.
All right, more of your phone calls and emails. When we come back, James, we'll get to you out of the break. More phone calls and emails here on Tider Insider TV. 205-348-WVUA is the number. That's 348-9882. Let's go back to the phones and talk with James right here in Tuscaloosa. James, how are you?
How are you doing tonight, Gary?
Doing well.
Good. Rodney, you doing good?
Hey, I'm doing well, James. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about how proud I am about those players, about where they got beat here in Tuscaloosa against Vanderbilt and then went up to Kentucky and played an outstanding game. And we're going to be all right. Alabama's going to be all right.
I agree with you, James, and you're right on short rest. I mean, that's just the way the schedule is for TV, but that's tough when you play Thursday night game. Kentucky played Tuesday, was sitting there in Lexington waiting. Alabama played Thursday night. The coaches had to start on the game plan immediately after that game. They were up to the wee hours in the morning. You have a little shoot-around on Friday, then you get on a plane Friday afternoon, you fly into Lexington, you turn around and play Saturday morning at 11 a.m., and you take the then number 2, now number 1 team right down to the buzzer. It was a nice bounce back. But, as I said, got to string some wins together. I agree with what you're saying, James, but this is a team that needs to get into the NCAA tournament, and they got a lot of work to do. But I do think they'll be okay. All right, let's go to Helena and talk with John. John, welcome into the program.
Hey there. I was just wondering, since we're losing Vallejo, the center, who are our backup offensive linemen besides the Kwanjo brothers, and does it look good on the offensive line and recruiting?
Well, John, you know, when you look at the offensive line, you have a lot of young guys there. I mean, you look at the right side, you would have Austin Shepard, who worked a lot at right tackle. Anthony Steen is a guy that started some. Of course, late in the season, he backed up Alfred McCullough. When you look at the center spot, a guy to really keep an eye on, whether he plays center or guard, I'm not sure right now, but Ryan Kelly, a redshirt freshman out of the state of Ohio. I know that the Alabama coaching staff is really high on him. Another redshirt freshman would be Isaac Latua from out in California. He's a guy that could play center or guard too. So those are, a few of the young guys. Of course, you mentioned Ari Kwanjo and Cyrus Kwanjo, who could possibly start at left tackle next season if they moved Barrett Jones inside to the center spot, which a lot of people think they will. But you've also got Kellen Williams, who has some experience at the center spot, as well as Chad Lindsey, who will only be a sophomore, Gary. So, you have a lot of young guys, and yeah, the recruiting looks pretty good right now. I think that, they've got a couple of tackles committed. They've got a guy that could play guard. Next year, this next recruiting class, I think, is going to be offensive line will be a high priority.
Yeah, we can't talk specifically about players that haven't signed yet, but yeah, they are addressing the offensive line and recruiting as well. All right, we've got to take a timeout, and we'll be back with more. One of the more humorous moments from Saturday's celebration is on the way. Stay with us. Did you see how Saturday's national title celebration ended? Nick Saban finished his remarks, steps back, and then receives a bucket full of not Gatorade, but confetti. But he did reenact his dance from the Superdome. And he's gotten a lot better at that. The team's gotten a lot better at it. I guess practice makes perfect, right?
I think he did that because he was cold, or?
I think cold, excited, and also thrilled that they didn't knock him in the head with the bucket this time. So Saban Shuffle has been born. Hey, a quick reminder that Rodney and I will have our radio show tomorrow night on stations all over the state of Alabama from 6 to 8. We'll talk in-depth recruiting at that time. Well, it's time for dinner tonight. Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport. Come over and join us about 7:15 for steak, ribs, chicken, whatever strikes your fancy. So you can catch the replay on WVUATV.com, and we'll have it for you tonight at 10:35 as well. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week. Have a good evening.